So I may support the Second Amendment, but I definitely do not think I should own a gun. I may have said in that video that I generally don't support regulations on guns. I think things like firearm registries have historically been used against oppressed minorities, like, say, Jewish people or a lot of people in Nazi Germany. Um, and you saw similar things occur in the Soviet Union. Um, so that's all fine and good. But in that same video, I said that we need to be creating like mechanisms by which people who are in a bad place mentally can get the help that they need, whatever that may entail. Um, I didn't really get into like my critiques of the current paradigms that exist in the medical system and like all of the problems I have with how mental illness is treated, but I did put out the idea that like we need to do something about it. The problem is it's sort of difficult to determine what exactly that thing is when so many of the, so-called mental illnesses that exist could easily be attributed to, things like capitalism or uh, industrialization or even the current medicines that we use to treat a lot of this stuff. Like the, I would even argue that the doctor-patient relationship, as it currently exists, is an inherently authoritarian one wherein the doctor may be liable to abuse the subject, depending on the circumstances. These are sort of general anti-psychiatry takes, and so it's interesting that I can hold those positions while at the same time saying, well, okay, well, we need to do something about these people who clearly are disturbed enough to go off and shoot a bunch of people indiscriminately so. And I mentioned culture as one of the issues alongside that. But I think there can exist guardrails to prevent people from getting a hold of firearms without necessarily creating legislation to do so. I think, like, in a hypothetical world where the owner of a gun shop was not purely motivated by profit, like, they could assess the moral or mental character of someone just by taking a gander at them, observing strange things about their interaction, and then refusing to sell the gun, that still wouldn't be enough, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of people who just straight up don't care. They sell the gun to the person who, needs help of some kind. And so, like, for as many people as we institute these programs for, these like new reimagined programs and existing programs that cover people, you're always going to need something to address the problems with those people. Like me, I'm self aware enough to go, I should not have a gun because I'm so impulsive, I'm so mentally unwell that there's a pretty good chance I'm just going to take that gun and shoot myself. Like, I'm not a threat to anybody else. I don't think ever in a million years would I be a threat to any person or group of people. But I think, like, myself, like, that's fair game, unfortunately. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, wake up hearing voices one day and then just fucking shoot myself, like I shouldn't be around guns. None of them. No guns whatsoever, right? But I'm self aware enough to realize that and to make the responsible decision, um, to not have that stuff around me, and to inform the people around me to not have it around me either. The thing is, I don't think a lot of people in my position are capable of doing that. Like, I'm psychotic. I hear and see things that aren't there. Not all the time, but it happens. And sometimes it is accompanied by really serious delusions that lead me to think any number of things, like grand conspiracies are after me, or you know, I should kill myself, and these sorts of things, right? Um, and I've almost successfully done so because of those things I was hearing and seeing. Um, it's just like really terrifying. There has to be some kind of guardrails to keep someone like me from getting access to this stuff. And I think one of the first ones, like besides putting more responsibility on the behalf of the people who actually own a lot of these shops, and better informing them, I think it starts in the family, in the household. Like, there, for whatever people there are that, like, we can't just treat with medication or psychotherapy or reimagined and revised, versions of existing treatments with um, economic help, with better schooling, more equal schooling, like all of these things, changing the culture, like all of these things sound great. They all um, would significantly reduce those numbers that we're talking about. There's always going to be some people you're going to have to look after, right? And I think those people need an educated family to look after them. Like, but by that point, we're getting to the minutia. We're getting to like the smallest numbers of people, right? I think generally speaking, um, most mentally ill people have a mindset akin to mine. Like, the people that I've met who have also, had mental health issues, like people I've been friends with, they all know that they should not have guns, right? Like, they're all pretty aware of the fact that they should not have guns. Um, now, I look at the last job that I had, and at my last job, it ended because I was stuck awake, reliving flashbacks from my childhood, and I was hearing and seeing things that weren't there while I was at work. And at some point, I just kept getting told, like, you should kill yourself, just over and over and over again. You know, you should take your friend's gun and you should kill yourself. Now, thankfully, I didn't do that. I ended up quitting that job because the stress of working there and interacting with people and how it interfered with my sleep schedule, it was so great that, like, I just had to. And I was able to eventually get to an environment where I would stabilize. But, like, imagine if I owned my own gun in that situation. I would have just shot myself, right? No, thank God they were my friends' guns, and they were stored in a spot where it wasn't easy for me to get to them, because I would have just shot myself. Like, we need to be living with other people. Like, I think we need more group homes, we need more educated families, um, and people who are like relatively functional and self-aware. They need to be living with other people. Because ultimately, all of the things that the government can do, we can do ourselves with the right amount of education, with the right measures and steps taken. We can do all of these things ourselves. At the end of the day, the governments that do them are made up of people. Those are people who do them. So there's no reason why we as a citizenry can't also do those things. But it takes this sort of, fundamental transformation where we start to realize that we are capable of doing something about it. Yeah. I suppose this is like critical support for the Second Amendment. It's like Second Amendment for everybody but me. um, yeah, I don't know. Like, there was a broader point I'm trying to get to, but I think by now I've forgotten what it was. Ultimately, we got to be doing something else than what we're doing. I mean, that much is abundantly clear. And whatever that ultimately consists of or looks like, I know that I'm not going to, be a direct participant in it because I, I can't be trusted with with so-called weapons of war. And I think this is sort of consistent with how I view drugs at this point, right? Like, I'll talk about the freedom to use a substance in a way that positively impacts one's life, the positive utility that holds, far outweighing the negative consequences of prohibition, and also the negative consequences of regulation. The fact that some people will inevitably use these things in a less responsible way if given more access to them. I've made all these arguments about why freedom trumps non-freedom. But at the same time that I've made those arguments, I've also said that I shouldn't be around most drugs because at the very least, at this point in my life, maybe forever, I'm so impulsive that if I'm around that stuff, there's a chance I could kill myself with it. And, like, no one here wants to see that. I used to think I wanted to see that, but the truth of the matter is you only think you want to see it in the short term. And then, as time goes on, the truth becomes a little bit more clear. The truth of the matter is, maybe we don't have the most immediate answers on whether life is worth living, but we can say with, I think, relative certainty that it's worth giving a try. And for as long as we're here, we ought to give that our best try. But I know what that looks like for me. And what that looks like for me is building guardrails in the home, with my friends, and with myself. But at no point have I felt like a government is necessary to institute those things. And that's that.